Start recording. Stop.
Okay.
And this is the Zoom internet.
Yeah, it's on. Okay, that's it.
Normally blind.
Okay, yeah, on.
So, hello, Gerotechnology class. We're here in Marina Del Rey at the offices of Skip Rizzo. We're going to see the virtual reality tour. Okay, so stop there.
Research Institute, but we're also sort of like the unholy alliance between Hollywood, the military, and academia. So we're funded a lot by the military to do projects around training, not weapons training so much as interaction with virtual characters that represent someone you might negotiate with or need to be culturally sensitive to. We're at the Flat World facility, which is sort of the skunk works where all the fun stuff gets done. Our other building on Fiji Way is just boring offices and some labs there. Let me just show you around the space a little bit, then we'll start some demos. If you come with me in here for a second. Yeah, this is like the wow thing that we show people in the beginning, just to show some of the technology. It's not just about building the applications in virtual reality. This is actually probably one of the world's most sophisticated light stages developed by Paul Debevic. And some elements of the movie Avatar were shot in here, Benjamin Button, Spider-Man, a whole bunch of them. But basically, each one of these processors in this rig of lights is connected to sub-processors and main processor. And the concept here is that you can illuminate an actor under all possible lighting conditions so that you can pop them into a film and it'll match the lighting elements of the film. So there's some of the other work that we do here. Like I said, the unholy alliance between Hollywood, the military, and academia, three cultures that are totally different, but you throw them all together and you get application development and science that might not occur otherwise. My work, I do some of the military work, but we also do non-military work and NIH-funded mental health and rehab work, National Institute on Disability and Rehab Research funding. We have a rehab engineering research center. You'll see some of those applications in a little bit. What we'll do next, I'll show you one other thing, a giant motion capture area, and then we'll go to the actual demos. What you'll see today, first off, is some military relevant and NSF relevant virtual humans that serve different roles that you can interact with and talk to. We'll go from that, quick tour of virtual rack, head-mounted display, exposure therapy tool for treating folks with PTSD. If you're not familiar with exposure therapy, I'll give a short tutorial on that. But that's a system we've been working on for a while, and it's in clinical trials, early clinical results, open clinical trials showing very robust effects. Then we'll move on to some of the stuff we do with motor rehabilitation, our NIDER supported work, aiming to make 3D user interfaces and games that allow people to do physical therapy, occupational therapy, in the home basically, with low-cost tools that allow you to interact in a natural 3D manner with game content so that we can try to make the very boring act of physical rehabilitation fun, engaging, hierarchical, so that somebody after a stroke, maybe they have only minimal use of their hand, we can set it up so that little minimal use like this can actually interact with the game content, and then as they recover function, which requires many repetitions, we can ramp up the stimulus challenge and foster rehabilitation in a more systematic way than what I think is being traditionally done. And I'll show one thing for laptop on some cognitive assessment. So our lab here, the VR Psych Lab, focuses on psychological issues. One thing you won't see, but we have is a group we work with at Children's Hospital using VR games to distract children from painful medical procedures. So PTSD, anxiety disorders, pain distraction, one domain. Another domain, the physical therapy, motor rehab, motor assessment. Another area, the cognitive assessment and rehab. And the fourth area is with virtual human work. And the work you'll see next, you'll see that, and then I'll make the extension to new work that we're doing, creating virtual patients that doctors, psychologists, social workers can interact with in order to essentially screw up with a digital patient before they screw up with a real patient. So with that, why don't we just take a quick look. These things up here, these cameras, are cameras used for motion tracking. So you may have seen people wearing the suit with little markers and so on. It's a way for us to capture, create animations of natural moving actors to put into virtual environments. But also, as a research lab, this, I guess, Mark, you're going to extend this out the whole length at some point?
Yeah, what we really would love to do is be able to do a 100-yard dash.
Yeah.
We can't, but that'd be, I mean, it won't work. It'd be really horrible and things will bounce and stuff, but that'll expose everything that's wrong with it.
By the way, Mark Bolus, Sidman School and ICT, right?
Yeah, our graduate school, cinematic arts, and then health friends in the projects here.
So, you know, in this environment, you can do research as well. So this is one of Mark's contraptions here. It's probably the best head-mounted display ever invented. Wide field of view, more like a natural field of view as opposed to a small headset. And one of the projects is to do redirected walking so that you can fully use her as they walk through here on a mission or some activity and present cues or activities that make them think they're walking in a straight line, but really they're getting the walking surface so they don't walk into the wall. So ways to fool the brain, and that offers functional value for certain applications, but also for the science of understanding the internal clock, so to speak, of where you are in space and how to mess with it, how to fool the brain. That's essentially what all simulation is a way to fool the brain for a specific purpose, to get somebody to actually interact with content or believe they're somewhere other than where they really are, whether it's an aircraft simulator or a simple virtual reality representation of that. All right? Good. All right. Now we're going to get to the fun stuff.
Is that headset up front?
And the reason for the name platform is that it's based around the concept of mixed reality environment that integrates Hollywood flats, fake scenery components with digital flats, things that you can manipulate and move around. You have a flat here, a physical prop, like say some of these paper mache rocks here, you know, and a digital flat around it. Make a little pattern or warrant of digital and physical props that you can set up in one way for a training mission. Have people go out to lunch, come back, and everything moves around it. It's a different environment. So as we walk over here, you'll see one of them, and this is a little bit more exotic one. We also hang out here on Friday afternoons. But this is a project called Gunslinger, and it's currently being revamped. It's more of an entertainment project, but integrates a variety of technologies. So you've got physical props mixed with digital screens, and screen there. There was one up there at one time. And on these screens will be a bartender, swinging saloon doors with a gunslinger that pops through, lady of the night coming down some stairs, and they're intelligent agents that not only by wearing this hat, cameras will track where I'm looking and where I'm facing, and the characters will know I'm looking at the bartender, and he'll maybe say something to me like, hey, you want a drink? What are you doing? Or whatever. I'll look at the girl, she'll say something else. Gunslinger will walk in, and it integrates and the characters can also talk amongst themselves. So it's a level of virtual human, physical prop, digital projection technology, tracking technology with cameras to know where the user is at any given point in time. You know, you have a little toy here that is tracked as well. So it's more of a platform to illustrate the integration of a variety of technologies, something you might see maybe at Universal Studios. So that's why we're called Plot World. Yeah. Bryce? By the way, this is Josh Williams, one of our lead scientists working with us here.
With you know, 3 screens that are interactive in this sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to add it all up together. I've been responsible at some time or another for buying each piece of equipment. They're probably in here, so I'm trying to think of what it would be. I think you're looking at with the physicality, you're probably looking at 30, 40 grand with the projectors, with the screens, with the set, and with the computers.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I thought you were going to.
If the project ends, I'm taking the bar home.
I'm taking the hat. So
All right, so I'm going to leave you in the good hands of Josh Williams here, who's going to take you all over here and show you some of the virtual human projects that you'll be able to see in the interaction.
A couple of our characters. A couple are already on the screen over here, but we're going to look at Sergeant Starr first. Okay. And you can kind of circle around. It's going to be on this screen behind me. Come down to the sky. Introduce yourself.
Who, me? Oh, I'm Sergeant Starr. I'm a virtual character. Maybe you've seen me before on the web at GoArmy.com. But there I'm stuck looking like this. But now, with a brilliant blend of pixels, polygons, and programming coupled with real-time animation and spoken word interface, I can do my very best to answer your questions on Army careers. And my lips move when I do it.
So this is Sergeant Starr. He's a personality that was created, I think in about 2005 or 6 for GoArmy.com. And on the GoArmy.com website, where he still persists, he's a chatbot. So he will have an animated entry into a very small window that hovers over their web page. Beneath him is a text window where, you know, like you might see in a AOL Instant Messenger interface. And you're going to ask him questions through a natural language, typing of those questions. And he's going to try to connect your questions with information that's available on the site, as well as play an audio sound bite with that, with the information that he might be able to point you towards. It's a very useful way to, one, make people feel comfortable approaching the subject matter, as well as pointing them quite quickly to things that they might have come there to see that they would have a hard time navigating to otherwise, given the great amount of data that GoArmy.com tries to present. But where we came in was the Accessions Command, U.S. Army Accessions Command, who are responsible from handshake to first assignment. That's their range of interaction with soldiers. They said, hey, you guys have these great virtual humans that in predecessors of the ones you see on the screens here. And you present them at scale, and that has some power, and the personalization, right? The ability to interact with those characters in person and in real time is something we would like to use with this Sergeant Starr personality. Could you make him come to life? So we did that here with the Sergeant Starr you see, and they've taken him since to a number of conferences that they visit on an annual basis. As well as installed him in their interactive vans, which are these tractor trailers that tour the country, go to sporting events and other types of events and campuses, both college and high school campuses. And he's probably been seen, you know, by 50 or 60,000 people at this point since 2008. So just in a couple of years, he's definitely been one of our more exposed virtual characters. Let me talk to him though. I want to give you an impression of how we interact with him and what things he knows about. Where are you from?
Fort Knox, Kentucky. It's where they keep all the important stuff like me. And the gold.
What is your rank?
I'm a sergeant, an E5. Although I keep hearing that I'm about to make E6. Staff Sergeant Star has a nice ring to it, don't you think?
How many jobs are there in the Army?
We have over 150 different MOSs available in the Army. Except being a virtual soldier, of course. That's all mine.
What is your MOS?
My MOS, or Military Occupational Specialty for you civilians, is 11 Bravo Infantry. Hua!
PUA?
Just downloading some info from GoArmy.com. Can you say that again?
What does PUA mean?
Well, civilians become soldiers while they attend basic combat training and then complete advanced individual training. It's where they learn their Army skills.
So we were doing pretty good right up until that last question. What we did was we went through some conversational introduction of Sergeant Starr, and so I wanted to ask him where he's from, what his rank is, because these are questions that a kid might ask if he came up and said, well, what do I know about the Army? Okay, I know that they have ranks. I'll ask him what his rank is. And then in some of his responses are going to be things that we don't know about, like MOS. What does that mean? So I wanted to ask him what his MOS was so he could kind of give me a deeper explanation. So I'm taking his cues to follow up with with additional questions. And that's kind of just a creative strategy. The reason it's a creative strategy is because it's not a technical strategy in what's going on behind the scenes of Sergeant Starr. Let me see if he can tell us about that. Tell me about your technology.
Hey, look at me. I'm a technological marvel. I have real-time speech recognition, cutting-edge computer animation, and a brain full of knowledge.
What can you tell me about natural language understanding?
Natural language is just like it sounds. The kind of talk we do in English, Spanish, Arabic, or what have you. I speak in English, not some artificial computer language like Java, COBOL, spreadsheets. And don't get me started on language.
How can you understand what I'm saying?
Most of the time I understand what someone is saying. Every once in a while I have trouble interpreting the question. But like the Army, I'm improving daily.
I'm going to ask him the same question I asked him before, just to see what he comes up with. Tell me about your technology.
I have the ability to recognize words and how they're used in order to answer your questions. It makes me the perfect student.
I think you might have another application running. Lip sync isn't perfect. I'm not saying it was perfect at the outset, but it's a little less adequate than it usually is. What I wanted to point out there, though, is I had asked him to tell me about your technology before. I asked it a second time. He gave me an alternate response. So in the case that he has an alternate response, he will provide that. It allows you to have a bit longer conversation because if that response triggers twice, it doesn't sound like the same response twice. Because that becomes a very obvious break in the present that you're sharing with the character. Yeah.
So if he doesn't know the answer, he's going to say,
Well, that's a great question. So we had that happen earlier where he kind of said, I was downloading some information. Could you ask me that again? So here's what he'll do. I'm going to just click the button, and so that we guarantee a nonsense input, and then we'll see what he gives us as output.
Could you try rephrasing that for me?
So the first time he's going to kind of prompt you to try again.
Sometimes I think you're just testing me.
Then he's going to try to tell like a joke that may get you to go to another topic.
Oh, look at the time. I gotta get out of here. I gotta clean it. There are some great jobs in the Army. Would you like to know more about jobs with the Patriot Missile Team or in communications?
All right, so what he did in the third case is he kind of tells another joke and then he segues it into a prompt to say, can you ask me about something I know about? Because I'm obviously not understanding or have a good answer for what you've already asked me. So he asked about what Patriot Missile Systems. Tell me about Patriot Missile Systems.
A Patriot Missile Battery is a great team to join. You might have heard about the Patriot Missile during Operation Iraqi Freedom. They were deployed to protect our troops from incoming Scud missiles. We've got jobs for Patriot Fire Control and Patriot Launching Station personnel.
So he's giving you some information that might be useful given your consideration of joining the Army.
so ask him how much you make.
Okay. How much money can you make in the Army?
Gotta go.
How much money can you make in the Army?
The Army is a career. Like most jobs, you start at the bottom and work your way up. And when you throw in the allowances for housing, meals, uniforms, medical benefits, we're very competitive with the civilian world.
Can I earn money for college if I join the Army?
Soldiers can get more than $70,000 down pay for their college education. Talk about a sweet deal.
So there's some sound effects. This is one. It's an important question. It's good that he has an answer for it. I like some of his other answers. They stay a little diplomatic. They say and they can skew towards vague at times. But as a proof of concept, what we really wanted to focus on with Sergeant Starr is the ability for virtual characters such as himself to be immediately updated with the latest information about how much money you can join on. Now, this Sergeant Starr is offline and for demonstration. That information is now 2 years old. What jobs are available in the Army, they can switch on or off given the Sergeant Stars that they have on the road with them. What incentives there are to join the Army, though they can't do this with the systems they have, it would be very easily updatable given a Sergeant Star that could be thrown replacement responses. Say it's no longer $2,000 if you join the Army in a certain career, it's $5,000 or something like that. So you talk about bonuses and whatnot. And so the updatability of that information that is attractive to the Army. But one quick thing I want to follow up with. Have you been in combat?
I can't be in combat, except virtually, through the America's Army game. But I've talked to a lot of my fellow soldiers that have. They talk about feeling an emotion and passion for their comrades and their country. It makes them feel very proud and very honored.
This is an important part of Sergeant Starr's persona. He doesn't want to come off as if he's every soldier. He doesn't want to seem to have been there, done that, and it's a very sensitive issue with soldiers that have been there and done that. So we don't want to give the impression that he has done anything more than serve his role for the Army as being a virtual character. But what happens, you show this to guys that are in the Army, and they say, well, if he hasn't been in combat, how does he have that? How does he have a combat infantry badge? So, tell me about your badges.
Here on my left is my combat infantry badge. Next to it is my air assault wings. I earned them in America's Army game. Well, virtually earned them, that is.
And he kind of said that in the previous response, but usually that goes missed. And these are some of the things that you have to worry about when you're building virtual characters. As you're creating a visual cue, in and of himself or herself, that these characters start to become responsible for not only what they've said, but how they're presenting themselves, what they're wearing, and we can both see that as a challenge in the case of Sergeant Starr, where he has a very critical audience, but we can see it as a great opportunity in some of the virtual patient work that Skip has done, because then you can use those physical cues and visual cues to create a character where those traits are very important for the clinician who's in training, and I'm sure many other instances you can think about. Show me your battle rattle. Sorry about that. No, go ahead.
Is this voice recorded previously by a human, or is this really the computer spitting out?
This is a recorded voice, so it's a canned voice, we sometimes call it. And the reason we went with a canned voice is because we could maintain the realism for a greater period of time than having gone with a synthetic voice. The synthetic voice capabilities are much more advanced than they were even 2 years ago, but they are still, let's say, a challenge to present a character that you want to have this, kind of very, let's say, realistic presence in this conversation. We're working on some other characters right now that are going to be delivered over the web, and in their case, you just start to, gauge, does the audience really need to believe this is a real person, or is it more important that I have the flexibility of creating more answers and updating those answers than it is to maintain that realism? So it's like it's kind of a check and balance. Show me your battle rattle. I just want to point out one other thing. You can take advantage of the virtuality of these characters by being able to change uniforms. So you could imagine this being in a military history museum. We could go through all the uniforms through military history across multiple forces. How difficult is Ranger School?
Ranger School is one of the toughest.
Then we can do little virtual pop-ups
here
as well.
For 2 months, Ranger students are trained to exhaustion, pushing the limits of their minds and bodies. You've got to be in top physical shape and always wearing what I like to call your full mental jacket.
All right, now if we turn our attention over here, I'll just
Yeah,
go for it. Go for it.
Oh,
okay.
Given the multitude of ways of phrasing a question,
Yes.
is it keying in on keywords?
This is a great question. It is. We're using a natural language understanding which is taking a statistical classifier and running it against the words that were recognized. So speech recognition system says, I said X. And it's looking for keywords. It's also looking for the placement of those keywords, and it's weighing them against what we call paraphrases that we have listed out at about a ratio of 7 to 1. So currently Sergeant Star has 300 responses. There's about 7 ways to get to any one of those responses. Those 7 ways are not always just 7 ways of asking the same question. Sometimes they're completely different questions, but we're just getting the most bang for our buck from an answer. Like the first one I asked them, where are you from? Fort Knox, Kentucky, and he tells a joke. That is also the response for where were you born, where are you stationed. So we just, we accept the fact that there's some redundancy there, but it's a better catch, right? It's a better net to make sure that we use the answers we have effectively, because they are costly, let's say, to produce and have in there, especially when you're doing with the recorded voice. So what is a little different than just text-to-speech, or rather speech-to-text recognition that you might do with your Dragon Naturally Speaking, is that the system is not just associating those key words with those paraphrases, but it's creating some weighting for which words are most important given these paraphrases. And in that way, it's not saying you have to ask it one of these 7 ways to get this response. You just have to ask it close enough to one of these 7 ways to get this response. And if close enough is not achieved, that's when we get one of the off-topic responses where it says, "Could you ask me that again?" And then goes through this progression towards saying, well, maybe you want to ask the real person, or tell some joke and prompts you to say, "Why don't you ask me about my badges?" So that's kind of how it works. Is that the system isn't locked into needing you to say these exact things. It just needs you to say something close. And giving an I don't know answer, or could you repeat yourself answer, is always better than giving you the wrong answer for a couple of reasons. Just not have the egg on your face in the conversational setting. But if it were a more, let's say, if it were a training circumstance or an education circumstance, we would then be responsible for negative training potentially if you thought the wrong answer was the right answer. So we have to try to avoid that in our design.
Are you aspiring to integrate AI in teacher generation?
Yeah, I think we would like to. Well, one, we have other virtual characters here who definitely have an AI component that is not represented by these characters. These characters are also running on a very similar architecture, so we're not missing anything. We'll talk about their setting here in a minute. But the other virtual characters that are worked on here at ITT do have some emotional modeling that's going on, and they have some goal management that's happening. So what you'll have is, in addition to a natural language face or any type of interface with characters that's conversational, they will have an emotional model that will change based on your interaction with them, which could make your mission, if you were a soldier in this training application, become more difficult. One example is our BiLab system, which is a negotiation with 2 characters, where their goals are not necessarily compatible with one another, nor are they all that compatible with your goal as the soldier in the training exercise. So when you start showing some, let's say, like you're giving into the goal state of character A, character B becomes frustrated at the relationship that's being built with character A, and starts to become even more adversarial and more difficult to deal with. So that's one, let's say, more AI relevant component of the characters here, but not we have on screen is probably not something we'll ever see, because both of these characters are very dependent upon the real person in the environment. In Sergeant Starr's case, he's accompanied by real sergeants that basically turn to Sergeant Starr to give some information about the Army. Not that they don't have, but just to let him shine, right? Let him be the attraction. And in the case of our interfaces twins, it's they're in the Museum of Science in Boston as of December of last year, and they're there to give you more information about other exhibits that are in the space around them. Doing any greater modeling to make them any more intelligent might be to the detriment of their goal, which is to get the information in your hands, and also be the gateway to starting a conversation with virtual characters that you can then carry over to real people. And that's a specific goal of these twins. Good morning.
Hello. Is there something we can help you with?
What can you tell me about?
Let's see. What are you interested in? Do you want to learn more about computers, robots, cell phones, hands-on activities, or how Grace and I work? Though I wouldn't call it work.
What can you tell me about cell phones?
Let's see. What are you interested in? Do you want to learn more about computers, robots, cell phones, hands-on activities, or how Grace and I work? Though I wouldn't call it work.
Tell me about cell phones.
Well, here at Computer Place, you can learn how cell phones bring together our electronic world. You can design cell networks or explore cell phone technology. So, which of those sounds interesting?
So you can see we're in a similar conversation that we were with in Sergeant Starr. It just has a different, let's say, slant. They're referring to things that we're not seeing here because this isn't the Museum of Science Boston. So situationally, this might make a bit more sense. One thing we did get was a repeat response there, which can break the illusion quite quickly. I wanted to point out, though, with these twins, or with two characters on the screen, you start to then create the complication of what's one doing while the other one's talking. And so we start to see like how the characters interacting, becomes a cue to us to maybe pick up on their relationship, and so we're taking advantage, in the challenge of having to deal with both of them at the same time, where we can also take advantage of how that, let's say, shapes their relationship in our perspective. Who are you named after?
Their namesakes are Ada Lovelace and Grace Thompson. Yeah, they may be old-fashioned names, but both are from the most modern computing women of their time. In the 1800s, Ada Lovelace predicted that computers would someday help us write music and create art. And in this past century, Grace Hopper created a computer program called Compiler, which helps people tell computers what to do. It could be said that Ada inspired Grace, or that Grace did all the work, in which case our names are turned.
So they're a bit antagonistic, and we kind of take advantage of some stereotypical, let's say, a sisterly competition in that way. What we're finding out since they've been in the Museum of Science Boston, and just anecdotally, we're going through formal evaluations right now, is that the kids that come into Connor's Computer Place where they're installed, just like moths to a flame, they just go up to the big shiny box and with the two characters that are just glowing and just want to start shouting at them and talking to them, and they just want to get right past the person who might be wearing a microphone to say, what are you doing in there? And they have all these great questions. Once the staff member can kind of instruct the kids a bit more about how to effectively ask their question, he can build a rapport both between the kids and Ada and Grace, as well as with himself or herself, and becomes this great bridge to questions that the kids may not have asked a real person, having been aired openly with these characters, can then be capitalized on by the staff member that even if the twins aren't effective at getting them from point A to the IBO dome, the staff member can can now approach them about that that topic. And so that's having it's getting the people that come there to spend a lot more time in the space, as well as the staff members to be able to talk about a greater number of topics about the educational exhibits that are also in the space. Are you computers?
I'm not sure I heard that correctly.
Are you computers?
I really wish we had an answer to that.
I hope you do.
We'll get it with the next upgrade. When is that? My bet is we'll get that with the next upgrade, too.
Do you have boyfriends?
Why? Is there another virtual human you think we should meet? I hope there is neural network and amino acid sequences. Afraid? What's wrong with just charming and generous?
So they can answer for some more real life like questions, favorite food, color, boyfriends, stuff like that, and in that way the kids can also kind of be asking themselves like how real are these characters. What's great about having installed these characters in the Museum of Science Boston is that even in giving wrong answers, it can be useful as a teaching tool of why that was a wrong answer. So it's just a great landing spot for for technology that it can't be correct 100% of the time, because even when it's incorrect, somebody can say, well, why do you think that happened? Why do you think they repeated themselves, or why do you think they didn't have the right answer? And so it just adds fuel to the fire of getting those conversations started that we were interested in the first place. Yes.
How far away do you think this technology is, going after the AI stuff, from actually learning, as opposed to having the information that's downloaded or put in?
Well, it's a hard question, and I would not want to be the ICT representative for answering it. One thing I'll tell you about the twins is we are headed towards direct interaction, so we're going to get past the me in the loop, and at the end of this year, the kids are going to come up and start asking questions themselves. We're already doing some of that in preparation for this direct interaction, and that's being fed into what we're calling our living laboratory of how can we effectively deal, especially in a place like Boston, with so many different accents and such a melting pot community. How can we make our speech models robust enough to handle that many people interacting? And it's not the learning that you're necessarily talking about, but what is also important in the data that we're collecting for that effort is how do people phrase their questions in such a way that we're coming up with less accurate responses, and how can we start accommodating for that? Now, I keep saying we, because the system is not accommodating for that. The system's not going to learn that on its own. Now, what we have are tools in place so that the system can more quickly tell us when it has not done a good enough job. So the system is aware of when it gave wrong answers. I don't know that it would call them that, but the system can quickly say, yeah, I haven't been doing that good this week, Josh. I need some help. And what I can do then is go through the logs and say, well, where did those wrong answers happen, and how can I make an educated, informed decision about filling in the gaps in our response set. When the characters themselves will be able to fill those gaps themselves, that's just beyond my capability of saying. I think Jonathan Gratch, who's one of our scientists here that are working specifically with the virtual human intelligence, he might be better able to give you an answer to that.
For the journal class, one of the ideas that we were thinking about doing, in addition to the virtual patient work, is to design a virtual Alzheimer's individual, and to use it. There's an organization in Chicago that takes middle school and high school kids and puts them through a little training course to become a buddy with somebody in the nursing home, so that they have to commit to doing 4 visits and so on. They can write a letter or 2 and so on. And they currently go through a pretty extensive workbook training type thing, and they may watch videos and all that. But to get them to be able to interact with somebody with Alzheimer's, and in my work with Alzheimer's, it was a real jolt when I was doing a neuropsych assessment at someone's home, and in the middle of the assessment, they say, "Who are you? What are we doing here?" And it's like, "Oh, well, okay, let me go back. Maybe explain before." But to prepare people, I mean, there's a certain element of experiential training that I think may have some relevance, whether it's for training journal students to interact with different types of persons an off answer, it's still credible to the situation. So it might be something that might be some low-hanging fruit, like we collaborate with school gerontology projects like that, and beyond just the experiential interaction and stuff. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, good. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
What you're going to see up here is what one of the victims, or volunteers, will see when they go into virtual rack over here. So wearing a head-mounted display. This is taking a second to load up. But the rationale for this project is the idea of exposure therapy for the treatment of anxiety disorders. In this case, the extreme end of the anxiety disorder continuum, post-traumatic stress disorder. Most people here familiar with exposure therapy? Anybody not? All right, so everybody knows what it is. Okay, good. So the brief two-sentence thing, graduated exposure to what you were afraid of or what you've been traumatized by, repeatedly while you narrate your experience in the first person, serves to raise anxiety to a degree where it can become prey to the process of extinction or habituation, and the anxiety level diminishes. You do this repeatedly over time, and eventually people that couldn't face some of the trauma that they had experienced or talk about it with anybody can then begin to process the emotional memories. And we're having a little lag here. I'm going to reboot this real quick. So what we've done here is create a simulation of Iraq and Afghanistan. And we wanted to design it in a way that, wanted to design it in a way where, here we go, all right. In a way where it would be generic enough for folks that had a variety of different challenging situations in those environments. So we chose to build a Humvee environment where you drive through a desert road. There's also an Afghan version where you go through Afghan continental mountains, and a city environment, 24-block city with building interiors, rooftops, market bombings, jets flying over, and so on. And so within that environment, we can put somebody in that environment, and we can adjust the parameters of it and make things happen that coincide with the story that they're narrating, or push the story a little bit, and to raise engagement. Traditionally, exposure therapy has been done exclusively in imagination. Well, with VR, we can get a person in a simulation that involves visuals, audio. When you get on here, you'll feel the motor of the Humvee coming through the space shaker here. And we don't have it hooked up, but we have a smell machine as well. So we can pump smell into the space. In here, body odor. We can blow up a vehicle, gunpowder, cordite, burning rubber, rotting garbage, diesel fuel, and so on. So we try to create a multi-sensory environment to foster the approach of exposure therapy. So who wants to try this out? And I'll show the features. Volunteer? All right, you would do the city. You get to hold it down in the city. All right. Now, you're going to drive this like you can see it over here by moving. Turret. Here we go. Okay. Hey, Kevin. It's all blurry. All right. So, here you go. You can start driving. So he's got the vibration. Of course, therapy may start by simply parking by the side of the road, the sound of the wind. Or more naturally add in this. You can also turn that off if that's becoming too much for the person. We can adjust the weather conditions. the steering wheel, because it's not about so much the driving component as the experience of it. Sometimes people, if they make a 90-degree turn in a headset, some people are susceptible to decide to stop there. And so you're approaching a city that, small desert city, might be a dangerous environment. Oh, and by the way,
I haven't done this yet.
oh yeah, whoa, that's a reality.
My boys are here.
All right, so now you notice these guys that sit next to you, we can get rid of them if they're not relevant to the environment. We can put them back in. Again, I can put you up in the turret.
Can I go more than one meeting?
Yeah, you can go all the way around. Let me put you, pretty much your vision of food. Let me zero you out here. Let you look ahead forward. Okay. All right, I'm going to put you back. You're in the passenger seat now. If you look to the left, you see you. Okay. Now that's you. Now as you approach this dangerous area, maybe a helicopter may buzz over and stop there. Let's back up a little bit. Helicopter, check this out. All right, right. Now, if you press that button while you're doing it at the same time, you'll go faster. All right. Speed up. We can also. How's the passenger doing? That was pretty close. Yep. The other side. The other side. Oh, I got it. Picture, guys. Fix them up. And we can make this trauma a little more significant if we look to the right now. That's about the extreme in this situation for trauma, really more traumatic events for combat medics in Afghanistan right now.
I don't start. What's his face said to me? It's easy. Whoa!
Now we're approaching the bridge area here. The surgeon up on the bridge. He just got shot by the guys on the right. We'll fix that guy up. Don't hit our own guy.
That's why I'm training, right?
We can begin to ramp things up, add more elements in it. What this thing illustrates is not only the therapy of how VR is well matched to exposure therapy because we can systematically control what goes on in the environment, but we can add or take away elements as relevant. That's one of the strong features of designing virtual reality for clinical purposes is that just like an aircraft simulator would serve to test and train piloting abilities, we can design simulations, bring the outside world into the clinician's office in ways we can't do any other way, and systematically control the intensity of the environment. Now, everything I've shown now certainly wouldn't be what you would do in a therapy session, throw all this stuff at a person. Watching exposure therapy, is really, I'm going to disable some of the effects here. That one out of there. We can bring that Humvee back and take it away. But when you see exposure therapy being done, it's almost like watching grass grow. I mean, it's very hard and challenging therapy to do, but there's a lot of repetition. So you may have an event here going through a palm grove where one of the key events is that somebody comes out of the palm grove. Let me zero you out again. An insurgent comes out of the palm grove. Right there. All right. And you go up ahead. You're narrating your story about what happened. Maybe there was a Humvee involved in it, and the Humvee blew up right after. And that's one of your sentinel events. Well, as you drive past that, you can reset that Humvee, I can hide it again, and if you stop, I can then say, okay, let's go back. We're going to do it one more time. This time I want to hear more about what was going on with the people in the vehicle, and what had you done before that, and you go over. over, and you do it. And, you know, the first, I mean, no patient has stuff sprung on them. You know, they're prepared in advance. What's going to happen? Oh, we're going to go through this again, and the vehicle's going to blow up, and it's going to happen right after the insurgent appears. And I want you to narrate it in the first person to go through. We do this over and over and over again, and you move on as they, eventually, people stop jumping out of their skin. They habituate to the content and end up processing the emotional memories in a way where they're not constantly being traumatized by it. What you see is it's really hard medicine for a hard problem, because typically what you see is when a patient comes in initially and they might describe that scenario. It's like, oh, we're in a Humvee, some guy came out of the Palm Grove, shot the passenger, and the vehicle front blew up. End of story. You know, cognitive, just the fact story. When somebody starts to turn the corner is when they start telling that story, and all of a sudden there's a tear welling up, and they tell the story like, well, we had stopped before Palm Grove and had a smoke. We were going to come back home in 30 days, and we were all looking forward. We were talking about our families. And the guy is sitting next to me, you know, and they say his name, Bob. He was looking forward. He hadn't seen his kid that was born while he was deployed. And all of a sudden, the emotional content is coming out in the narration. And it's painful, and it's hard. And most therapists don't want to push patients. You know, the last thing in the world you want to do is see your patient in discomfort, but in reality, that you've got to push them. Not to the point where they're freaking out, but to the point where they're facing what they've been avoiding. Because avoidance is one of the key elements of PTSD maintenance. People start to avoid driving on a road because they see trash by the side of the road when they come back. Or they won't go to a marketplace, they'll go to a place where there's any crowds. Or they won't drive on any road now. They won't even leave their house now. And it starts to take over. Best way to think about PTSD, think about last time something really bad happened. Loss of a loved one, you know, death, car accident, maybe last time you had your heart broken, and how miserable you felt when it happened, and for the next day and whatever. Well, imagine that feeling then going on for 6 months, a year, maybe even getting worse, because the other things that pile on as you live a life in despair like that. And that's really what PTSD is. Behaviorally, we look at it from the exposure therapy perspective as a failure of extinction. So the person doesn't adapt and adjust and habituate to the content that is traumatizing them. Everybody's had bad things here. A month later, it's, you know, it still sucks. You think about it, and it's bad, but you're not the same way you were right after it happened. You know, and that's one of the modest goals here. We're not in the business of erasing people's combat memories. They're going to always have that. War is going to change a person, and they're going to be different. There's no question. But you're going to be different if you win the Nobel Prize as well in a different way, and that's just part of life experience. That's what we got right and wrong, user-centered design. One of the things they said was that the Humvee, driving it with a gamepad, fine, you know, no big deal. But walking around in a virtual city, it's unnatural and distracting. So we got a fake weapon, a molded resin weighted weapon, and you drive in the city by wearing a headset. The headset is the rudder. You're going to go wherever you're looking, and you got a thumb pad here. And so you go back, go forward, backwards. I'm always going to go the direction I'm looking, and I can also hit this button to run, and so forth. So would somebody like to give it a go? Now, you can't fire the gun. You can't shoot things. But as I was mentioning, we're not trying to foster the cathartic revenge fantasy here. We're trying to help people to get on and deal with their anxiety with just these out of their own eyes. And the right hand towards that woman or the guy, you're going to go towards them. Press the button now. Forward. See? So the headset is the rudder, the thumb mouse is the gas pedal. Okay? Now, turn towards the road now, and you're going to walk up that street. As usual, we can adjust the time of day, nighttime, morning, clear day, night vision, so on. You can make different things happen, like a RPG. Now we can eliminate the characters in this world as well. So now you're in an empty city, but I got to change the sound now. You just have wind. You can introduce the prayer call. Maybe people will start to come out now. Once you walk up that street, there's a crowd of Iraqis hanging out. So the characters are back in the world now. Maybe we can send an 810 over as we walk around. Different settings where we can adjust the amount of injury and trauma that takes place. That's one of the more severe cases. Now, I can also move you to another area of the city. So, now you're in a safe zone at the north of the city. If you look around, turn all the way around, you can see a little bit safer up on that end there. Back up, I think you're caught in that truck. Yeah, back up, go the other way, yeah, there you go. Another, somehow you're stuck in something there. Why don't you walk towards those soldiers? Oh, with your thumb controller.
Skip, can I just ask you?
So the next project.
Can I just ask you about Second Life, and is this any similar to Second Life, or you collaborate with them at all?
This?
Yeah.
No, this is Second Life, a little bit different. I mean, that's an online virtual world that you can navigate with your own avatar that you create. A lot of value in that, but you don't have the level of systematic control in that environment. And I mean, I believe, or Jackie Mori is doing some work with Second Life, building a lodge that's a gathering point for vets to be able to hang out in and so on. I think that's really good work. As far as doing intensive therapy like this, I think therapists really got to be in the room, and you've got to have more precise control in Second Life allows for the introduction of stimulus elements and the taking away of those elements. We do a lot of the, within exposure, you're doing things like psychoeducation, breathing exercises, and so on. You give a person a recording of the session, so between sessions they can listen to their own narration. You have a hierarchy of places and things they avoid in everyday life that becomes part of the homework. So you take the easiest one and you say, all right, do you think you're going to be ready to maybe go to the 7-Eleven down the street? And that's something they do on their own, and you try to use what we call in vivo exposure to supplement what's done in the hour and a half of therapy. Yeah, let's connect. Okay, over here. Again, something quite a bit different. Kevin, once you fire up, this is a stereo television for starters. This is something you can get at Best Buy. This at the time was $2,200. Run on a regular computer, and you'll be able to see stereo, but only a few folks will be able to see it. Why don't we have one person wear these glasses? Some of the other folks can wear these, but they're not as reliable. These are like $30. Those are quite a bit more. But you want to get a little bit closer. But I'll demonstrate, and you can pass these around. Here's another pair if somebody wants to try them. There's a couple more pairs here. Why don't we give it a go? Now, we wanted to use devices that people may have in their home. Of course, not everybody has a home theater or a stereo television, but eventually a lot of people will. Everything you see here can be run in mono without the stereo effects and on a regular PC or laptop. What the innovation is with this particular thing, much like the Wii, but with a little bit more precision and also with the capability of doing a lot more, is a 3D user interface. So the webcam that's hanging over the screen there is tracking these colors. Now I can put this on my hand, on my hat, or whatever, but the point is, now I can interact naturally with content. If I go forward, this rocket ship will take off. If I hit those things, I get points. I don't want to hit an asteroid. I stop there, pull back, go down, go forward. So if you're not wearing a stereo glasses, you see a double image. If you're wearing a stereo glasses, these things are going to be coming out at you. Somebody want to try this? You get a stand in front of the camera here, and if you go forward, it's going to take off. You pull back, stop. Now, we usually have it on a jogging weight. We can add weights, take it away. You have a rest or whatever. You can do supination, pronation, reach, pull, range of motion. This is just one game out of many. Maybe, yeah, you may want to pull back. So this is just one demo game to illustrate the idea of an extremely low-cost 3D user interface that allows people to interact with content. I can put a light on each hand and be a soccer goalie, blocking walls as they come out at me. There's a whole variety of things. We'll show a couple more real quick. But the point is, with a $50 webcam and $4 or $5 and a couple LEDs, little thing we built here with a battery, we can now build things that people can put in their homes that can be connected online, so a therapist can review progress, can perhaps update the challenge level of the games, or make the games a little easier if the person's discouraged and having a hard time. We can put this on a hat, and I'm at the end of the game here. Oh no. I can put this on a hat and do balance exercises. We have one, stop this one now. We have one that's an actual penguin. I don't know if we'll have time to show that, but you wear a baseball cap with a light, and you drive a penguin down a ski slope by shifting back and forth, leaning forward to go faster, leaning back to slow down. Think about that for balance training after a brain injury or stroke, or fall prevention training, but in a fun game-like environment. You wear a harness perhaps, and you get to shift back and forth. Prosthetic leg training, balance training, and so on. So we focus on upper extremity. We have devices with springs. Do we have any of those? Spring? Where you have spring devices working with Francisco Valenzuela and engineering, and you have little markers on the springs. Work of physical therapy or maintenance of physical function, fun, engaging, exciting, measurable, controllable, all the things that you can do with a simulation. All right, why don't we do...
Is it all in 3D or do you have some in 2D? What about for those individuals that have trouble in 3D like me?
That have trouble with 3D? Well,
so do you, I'm
we
just
do it in
asking,
mono.
do you have a version in 2D for those
Yes,
people
yes.
like me who have
Yes.
trouble in 3D
And
who can only do it for a short period of time?
absolutely. And we also, I mean, 3D is sexy, it's exciting, but in reality, real true stereo only matters for maybe a range of about 6 feet around you. After that, secondary cues, occlusion, light, clarity, the whole variety of these things, linear perspective, give you the sense of depth. So people may not have true binocular 3D, but they can see depth in some of their used cues to get a sense of depth. So the games are all, I mean, we're designing the game so they can run on the lowest level platform possible, so somebody doesn't have to buy these to still be able to have fun doing these things, just like a Wii. Now, a Wii is a cool interface. It's not as precise as that. You can't, it's a game, you know, and the Wii Fit is a cool extra game, there's no doubt. But you can't, it's not rehab. Some people take this stuff out of the box, throw it at a patient, and call it rehab. We do rehabilitation, you know. Oh yeah, here's the camera sees these little markers and pops up a graphic image, an augmented reality thing, and then we can begin to do stuff with this type of format to make a game. We have a chopstick game and so on. Why don't you show the Chinese character video as well? So the point is, we try to make it as cheap as possible to run on anybody, on your grandmother's PC. That's a design demand, but we can also scale it up. So we could. So here's one where you're just using one of these lights, and we can unplug, you know, something like this. And there's this one here, and now you got a magic wand, and that person's doing this when they stay within the boundaries, following that little dot. Go down here. Go up here. If they go deviate too far, it won't exhibit the color. Go down, down, and up, and then that character appears in the game.
We've done studies with Alzheimer's patients in regard to virtual reality and stimulation, and does it work? Does it help them?
We haven't done any rehabilitative work with AD. We're doing a study now for the Alzheimer's Association, looking at visual spatial ability, manipulating blocks and superimposing them, and also place learning in an environment, a thing called the Morris Water Maze, with the idea of comparing that with traditional neuropsych tests. With early Alzheimer's, we're having a problem getting our early dementia patients. If anybody has any connections for that, maybe you guys do. We're having a real challenge with this, but the idea is to spot in the early phases of Alzheimer's things that you might not get until 3 years down the road with a naming deficit and some of the other things. So you can spot early on if a person has a problem with their hippocampus, creating a mental representation space. That's a whole other set of projects. And we're doing that as an assessment. Now, creating, engaging, stimulating, learning, social environments. It's just limits of our imagination and funding. You know, that's the reality. Okay, great. Thanks for coming.
What about with autism?
Yes. All right. Well, let me give you one idea on this. There's a variety of things that you can do. Whether it depends on what element, what's the characteristic that you want to address with the population. You want to address the social disengagement. You want to address the coordination problem. You want to address the obsessive focus on some things. Like say, give you one quick example. Or do you want to do skill training? Like I can show a video if you're interested of a fire safety training game for kids with high functioning Asperger's. And there's a fire set in the house, and there's a little dog, and the dog is the guide that shows you how to escape from the house. If you get closer to the fire, the alarm gets louder, and you go into the room and you see the fire. And these kids, some of these kids, I don't want to say these kids, but some kids like the cartoon characters, so they'll engage with it. So you can begin to teach them safety skills with characters that they link to. One harebrained scheme that I want to do at some point, if I can get some funding, is I want to build a virtual buddy that's a robot, a virtual robot, that the kids can interact with and play different online games or whatever games, develop a bond interaction with this robotic character, which these kids oftentimes have a little bit of an attraction to. As the child develops a relationship with this robot, eventually, maybe one day, all of a sudden, the robot doesn't look so gray, it starts to look a little pink. Maybe another day, a little eyelash pops out. And maybe another day, the pupils dilate. Maybe another day, the face rounds a little bit. And all of a sudden, you're morphing in more human-like characteristics into the virtual representation that they develop a bond with. And hopefully, the idea is that they carry over their social engagement with the robot into more human-like characters and develop a whole thing. I mean, this is a long-term kind of a thing, and this is not something you just do in a one-off for 20 minutes in a research study. And the problem is that if you can't do 20 minutes in a research study, you can't get the preliminary data that NIH craves to have in order to get the big funding to do the kind of real serious long-term tests that you need to do. The big challenge with getting research funding in this area. Interfaces that you can buy at Fry's, Best Buy, online, whatever. They give you forces. They can fight against you. They can aid you. And they're fun game things. You notice they have a gun on them. We left the guns on them because the shooting game comes with them, but they're also good handles for people to grip onto. So after a stroke, these replace something that costs $2,500, Omni force feedback device, a variety of these things, but for $150 each. The only problem is you don't get a lot of range to move around. So we decided, what about yoking two together on one computer and develop bimanual coordination games? So I want to do that. And all our things usually have an interface that the clinician can adjust the difficulty levels based on the needs of the patient. And your job here is going to be to balance a platform when a block comes down. Are you okay, Kevin? Oh, there you go. All right. Now you want that block to go in the middle or right there, back there. Right there. Hold it. And this is easy because it's a big surface. The friction there, which we can, of course, modify. We can have a marble, so it's really hard. You can do the labyrinth kind of game with the little holes with the marble and so on. So we're trying to develop very simple and easy bimanual coordination games. And we have ones where you got to go together and pinch something and pick it up, or pick a block up over another object or a wall or something like that. But you feel the forces here?
That's definitely in the way that it's
yeah, and the little, yeah, there you go, there you go. Hold it. Now for you, you can do it, but after a stroke where you got an impaired limb, it may be more challenging. Now, these are the early steps. I mean, we've got good good long-term commitment from National Institute on Rehab, NIDR, National Institute of Disability Rehab Research. We're evolving these. We have a clinic down in Long Beach, Precision Rehab, donated a couple of rooms for us to set up all our stuff. And of course, we have a Wii and a Sony iToy. We get people going with some of those things. But those aren't rehab tools. You can't adjust parameters around a person's disability. You can't systematically ramp things up. The game does it, but you want to be able to do it based on, you're doing precision rehab, you've got to be able to control parameters. And you want to get the numbers. You want to get the performance values out so you can measure change and so on. Okay. Cool. Let's just show the, can we show the video of the penguin real quick? And then this is the one for shifting back and forth. We also have a digital spirometer, you know, the breathing thing that is used for helping people wean off of a ventilator after a spinal cord injury, or to know the patient, you know, we're not just, the technology doesn't fix anybody. It's a tool in the hands of a well-trained clinician. You go through this, then you start exposure in session 4. In this study, this was our first trial, open clinical trial, no control group, but these were patients that had tried some type of treatment prior with no benefit. So this is their second shot. 20 completers, 19 men, 1 woman, average age 28. 8 years in the service, 2.6 deployments. So these weren't just wet behind the ear grunts, you know, these were, you know, a mix of people. PTSD checklist, the military version that's commonly used to diagnose PTSD, pre-treatment, post-treatment, and a 3-month follow-up. Significant, statistically, good effect sizes, significant, clinically meaningful change as well. 16 to 20 no longer met PTSD criteria at the end of treatment. Here are the individual data points for the successful, the 16 successful. Only 1 backslid, but still was below PTSD levels, and 4 unsuccessful. The Beck Anxiety Scale, a similar type thing for anxiety, same pattern of results. Depression Scale, same pattern of results. A comparison, next step was with care as usual, not randomly assigned. These were people that were in the CBT group, didn't want individual trauma-focused therapy. These were people that had tried imaginal exposure with no benefit or sought out VR. Same pattern of results here, different scale, we use a different measure, clinician-administered, this should say clinician-administered PTSD scale. And here is the CBT group, which showed some benefit, but nowhere near, and the dropout rate was a lot more, people dropping out of treatment in the CBT group as opposed to the VR group. That looks pretty high, 42%, but when you put it in the context of military mental health, multiple session treatment, that's really good. When you look at the median number of mental health sessions that active duty military personnel participate in is 2. So we're asking people to go through 10. But that thing about engaging and getting people to come to treatment is a key thing, because we know people that need it the most oftentimes are the least likely to seek it. So we're trying to break down barriers of care. Our view, take the smell off the diagnosis and therapy, call it post-deployment reset training, and make it part of the training regimen between deployments or upon return home, where you go through this process, and by doing it digitally, it may appeal to a generation of soldiers that grew up digitally. Now, one last thing, doing a bunch of other research in this area. Yeah, let's jump ahead here. I'm going to jump. Yeah. Virtual humans. As you saw before, some of the previous work, virtual humans have been used in research in clinical areas previously. Our work was, though, to build virtual patients, to take some of these characters you've seen for different purposes. One particularly is a negotiation training scenario where you interact with an Iraqi elder or Afghan warlord and a third person to achieve some aim in negotiation. You can adjust the challenges. So we thought, well, negotiation, that's sort of like therapy. So you build virtual patients. This was actually, we didn't have any funding, so we took a doctor character from one of the negotiation scenarios, turned him into a 16-year-old that didn't want to be in therapy, hard clinical challenge, and that was the first one we did just to get our feet wet. We got a little bit of funding and built Justina. And I'm going to show a video clip of a psychiatry resident interacting in a clinical interview with a sexual assault survivor, and I think you'll get the point here.
Hello, my name is Dr. Davis.
Notice his manner, he's kind of smiling.
Mm-hmm. What brings you into the office today?
Something bad happened that night.
I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me what happened?
I was in the car with Eddie and he stopped the car and wanted me to kiss him, but when I tried to stop him, he threatened me with a knife.
When did this happen to you, Christina?
I was so scared. I thought I might die.
So that wasn't an accurate answer to that question, but it was a default answer because the language recognized it in particular question.
Very tough for you.
Relatively credible for a therapy. So.
Yeah, it still is.
That was an empathy statement.
You find yourself still being bothered by what happened?
So he's easing into determining PTSD.
Whenever thoughts of the event pop into my head, I put my iPod on real loud.
Now he's going to follow up on thoughts.
You mentioned thoughts pop into your head. What kind of thoughts pop into your head?
Now he's
I want to get away.
Reflection.
When you think about it, you feel like you need to get away?
That horrible time plays in my mind over and over.
Okay. So this can go on, but the point is, all these scenarios, nobody's going to mistake them for reality, but people have this tremendous ability to suspend disbelief and interact as if. And so for training clinical skill, I think this is an important area to be pursuing. Yeah, there we go. Military agrees. We're doing a project with the USC School of Social Work. They have a master's in military social work program they're starting up. So building military patients, Sergeant Starr, we give a new name, Sergeant Rocco. We're going to begin to start to train people how to interact with military personnel in a social work format, but as well begin to learn how to do various types of exposure therapy, even virtual Iraq exposure therapy. So this character will be in the setting doing their narration, and the clinician will have the control panel and be able to introduce or take away things, and we'll be able to monitor and train that, maybe have a third automated tutor pop in if somebody is just throwing too much at the patient, not paying attention to the heart rate and skin conductance, which we also track. We're not listening to the patient. And, Sigmund Freud kicks in the door and, gives somebody a ass whooping in their training, But anyway, that's really, I love this because it's a simulation within a simulation. It's just like if you've ever seen the movie The 13th Floor, if you haven't, rent it. classic VR movie that's really a good movie, and it has something to do with a simulation, a simulation. So with that, we're going to have to stop because we have a meeting and a phone call coming up. So I want to thank you all for coming. I hope this has been of interest to the classes. Gero in technology?
Yes, technology for older adults.
I should probably take that class, actually, find out what else is going on that I'm not doing. But yeah, good stuff.
Thank you so much.
All right, if
Thank
everybody's
you.
interested, feel free to be in touch. All right, this is something we developed for kids to assess attention, process problems, and it's a virtual classroom. Sorry, I completely forgot I have this on. I can put the child in any seat. In advance, I can control the stimulus parameters, and once this kicks in, turn up some sound. So here you have a classroom simulator. So you can assess whether they want to talk to Harry Potter in the back seat, they're young Harry Potter, or are they going to pay attention to stimuli on the board. Meanwhile, we can introduce distractions, and I'll just wheel through them real quick. Principal walks in, stops, then he's going to walk, give the kids the hairy eyeball. Meanwhile, I can put the kids in different locations. I'm just going to pop around to some of the different spots in front of the class, if that's relevant. Okay, back to the beginning. Intercom, shuffling a paper, drop pencil, another knock on the door, teacher's going to go get it, kid in the back is going to throw a paper airplane, school bus, car, this kid's going to pass a note to this little girl, this little boy's going to drop a book, jet flying over. And basically,
This time you will be doing something a little different. You will be seeing letters of the alphabet appear in the middle of the blackboard. I want you to click the leftmost button once, as quickly as you can, whenever you see the letter K, if it comes after the letter A. First, you will see the letter A.
So this is a continuous performance task. So the object is to watch the letters as they flash, and when you see an AK sequence, hit your button. It goes on for 10 minutes. One of the features of this is that when if you're looking at the board and you're missing targets, that's sort of like a loss of focus. But if you're looking out the window at something and you miss a target, that's a fundamentally different type of attention error. It's a distractibility error. Current testing does not parse any of that stuff out and doesn't get a metric of head turning and fidgeting in coordination with a cognitive task. So that's what we measure as an AK. Anyway.
Is it almost subjectively?
No. There's like 34 metrics that come out of this at the end. The very basics that you get from traditional things like the reaction time, the response variability, the omissions, missed targets, the hitting when there's no target, and
but also the
head
movement.
Yes, and you can replay a video of a kid's head moving.
Oh, okay.
In fact,